Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Blabin Translators. My name is Dmitry Kornyukhov. I'm your host. Joining me tonight, my incredible co-host, Yelena Tereshenko. Hi, Elena.
Hello, everyone.
Blabin Translators is the first live talk show about translation and translators. This is a fun little project where Yelena and I invite amazing and awesome people from translation industry, and we talk about all kinds of topics, from publishing books or working with publishers or working on video games, and so on and so on. And tonight we have a very interesting conversation. Our guest tonight is Carissa Skrivanek, and she's English in Arabic into English translator from United States, and she also has a master's degree in international relations, and she loves working with non-native English speakers in the United States, and she also volunteers for mentoring program for refugees, and she helps refugees to feel welcome in their new homes. And before we go to our topic of the conversation, Carissa, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a few things about you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the program. My name is Carissa, and I have been an Arabic to English translator since about 2009. I fell in love with the Arabic language and culture when I studied abroad in Cairo for a semester in college. And ever since then, I've really enjoyed continuing my studies and working with people from Arabic-speaking countries. I am currently in nursing school because I want to combine my love for Arabic with the medical field. But I also, in my free time, I like to volunteer as a refugee mentor, helping refugees, not just Arabic-speaking refugees, all kinds of refugees, just kind of like helping them along their way as they start a life in a new country.
And why did you choose the Arabic language as your working language?
Well, I was pre-med in college at the beginning, and I thought I would take an Arabic class for fun. I thought writing backwards would be kind of like an art class. I thought it would be like a nice break from all of the sciences, and I just fell in love with it, and I really enjoyed the way there's a lot of humor in speaking in the culture, and I just kind of ended up changing tracks.
So you first started learning Arabic in the United States, and then you said you spent a semester in Egypt. How did you decide to go in such a culturally different country?
Well, I knew I wanted to study abroad to learn more about another culture, but I also I kind of wanted to do something drastically different, and I knew that Egypt was a safe option for me. My family told me that I was not allowed to go, but I said, sorry, I bought the ticket anyway. So I was really interested in the modern culture. I know when I say I went to Egypt to study, everyone thinks pyramids. Did you go see the pyramids? Yeah, I saw the pyramids. The pyramids are great, but my favorite thing about Egypt is the people. They're so funny. They're really humble, and it was just a lot of fun for me to interact with the people and learn more about what's going on in the country today.
How was the real Egypt somehow different from what you imagined it would be like? Or life in Egypt, was it in some way different than you imagined it would be?
Well, I wasn't sure what to think, but I knew before I left, a lot of friends and family were scared about security concerns and my safety. But I was really impressed when I was there. I could not have felt safer. After a month living in the dorms at the American University in Cairo, I decided I wanted to live with a host family. But that's not a general practice in Egypt, because it would be kind of strange to have a woman in the house with strange men. like that's not really culturally appropriate, or having a strange man in the house with someone's daughters. So I found another student from Egypt and asked him if he would walk around and try to help me find a place to stay. And so we were looking for an apartment in a very popular or populous area, very traditional, where there weren't windows, there were just curtains on these big tall buildings. And then we walked around asking if there was an apartment available, but it's unacceptable in that area for a woman to be in an apartment alone. And so I ended up finding a woman who was, she was kind of like a real estate broker, casually. And I was asking her about finding a place, and she said, come back tomorrow. And I came back, and they ended up inviting me to live with her family. So,
wow.
So it was pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great story.
And have you had any other cultural difficulties adapting to life in Egypt?
Trying to think. It is a little bit difficult being a foreigner. In some ways, it's easy because as an American woman, I think I have a lot more power than I would as an Egyptian woman. Because I know that if anybody were to try to harm me, that there would be retaliation against them for sure. But on the other hand, having people say, foreigner, foreigner, and at least I could understand, they're like, oh, a foreign girl over here. I'm like, I'm here, I know what you're talking about. So being the foreigner was challenging for me sometimes. And I mean, there was some sexual harassment too, kind of minor incidents, but for the most part, I felt like the community was really supportive. And even one time I was on a bus and there was a man who was kind of being inappropriate. So I spoke with another man on the bus and told him, and they kicked him off. So there's really kind of like a nice support system there, and I felt really grateful that I could use the language to kind of work together in the community.
That's great, because actually stories of sexual harassment is something I hear a lot from people who go, from tourists who go to Egypt. Something I hear a lot. I haven't been to Egypt myself. Right. I heard that it's great and safe on the territory of the hotel, but when you go into town, then someone might be inappropriate, as you put it. But it's great. It's actually great to know that you can ask for help there and you'll get help. That's something
right.
amazing.
That's true. That's true. And I think there are kind of like two separate categories of sexual harassment. Sometimes they'll just say, kind of like cat calls when you're walking by. Like they'll be like, you're so beautiful, you're like cream, you're like the moon, like they'll say, things like that. And that can be really annoying to some people, but I feel like that's something that I guess I don't really get super upset about it. So sometimes the harassment, I think sometimes it's reported to be more severe than it is.
It wasn't actually anything serious, just unpleasant, I would say. I haven't heard of anything serious, just something that no one likes.
Right, and actually, I mean, I did, so I was in Cairo in 2005 for about 6 months, and then in 2012. And in 2012, one time I was walking, and a guy came by on a motorbike from behind me and grabbed my butt while he went by. And I was like, what just happened? How can you ride a motorbike and do that at the same time? So like that kind of surprised me and kind of put me on guard a little bit. But other than that, I really had few issues.
So you basically lived in Egypt in 2 different times, and I think the political regime was different in 2005 and in 2011. Have you noticed any differences? I mean, in terms of the quality of life or something like that?
Well, I mean, both times I saw a lot of frustration about unemployment and poverty. Both times with corruption, but when I was there during Mubarak in 2005, and then during the elections and the election of President Morsi in 2012. And that was really kind of an exciting time with the change and the elections. And a lot of people were rejoicing when Morsi was elected, and they kind of were hoping that change would be happening. So it was really an exciting time. And then people were looking at the Constitution and talking about the Constitution, delivering copies of it so that citizens could be involved in the political process. So I saw an increase in desire for involvement in the process, but I still saw a lot of the same corruption. And I think it's hard because people want to see change very quickly, but sometimes change takes time. So it's a challenging situation.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a question from one of our viewers. Andrea is asking. Yeah, probably this question, probably you heard something about it. As you might know, the Italian researcher Giulio Regeni, I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name, was tortured and killed in Egypt, probably by police forces. But it was recently, I followed the link Andrea provided, it was in 2016, so quite recently. Were aware of violence by the police against Egyptian dissidents or foreigners, probably in the time where you were there?
I definitely heard about it happening.
Probably like many.
Right. I didn't personally have like a friend or somebody I knew personally be tortured, but there was definitely some corruption with the police. So, for example, even if somebody committed a crime against me and then I brought it to the police, maybe they would persecute me or prosecute me because of it. You know, it was kind of a wild card what the police were going to do. So dissidents could definitely be picked up and go missing, and then foreigners. I guess I think there's a little bit of hesitance to take certain foreigners because the governments couldn't take action back. But you know, one kind of sad thing in Egypt is that like the foreigners are treated better than the citizens. So sometimes they talk about how, you know, if there's like a train wreck, you know, they'll report how many foreigners were killed, but they don't even bother reporting the Egyptians. And so I think that's kind of a tough thing as well going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So circling back a little bit to the topic of our conversation, right now you're working with refugees, and my question is how did you end up working with refugees? Was it inspired by the experience you had in Egypt, or you had some inner desire to help other people?
I think it was partly inspired by my experience in another country, and you know, being appreciative of the people who helped me out when I didn't know where I was going. So I kind of wanted to exchange the favor, and also I really wanted to help refugees from Arabic-speaking countries here. But when I started working as a refugee mentor, I was in Omaha, And in Omaha, Nebraska, there are a lot of refugees from Burma or Myanmar. And so I ended up hooking up with a family that didn't speak Arabic. They spoke Karen. But I was really excited just to be a part of it because, you know, while we're waiting for some more Syrian refugees to be let in over here, I might as well help another family. But so I started helping a Karen family. Basically, the goal is to just kind of help the family adjust to life in the United States. So I started working with a single mom and her 2 kids. They had been in the refugee camp in Thailand for probably about 5 years, and they had been offered to come. They were offered positions to come over to the United States, and then the woman's husband would be offered, you know, a couple years later, a trip over. And unfortunately, 2 years later, when her husband was offered a spot, he declined and he didn't come to join his wife and kids. So here's a woman with her 2 kids, and her husband decided not to come. And so she's kind of working to support her 2 kids by herself. So it was kind of, it was fun for me to help her and, you know, take the kids to cultural events, but also to help her read her mail and pay her, you know, how to write her checks and pay her bills. And even like if her water stopped working in her apartment, she didn't know who to talk to. So it would just not work until I was like, oh, what happened to your water? You know, so I started working with this family, and I've continued to work with this family, but I've also worked with some other families too. And the main goal of being a refugee mentor is to kind of pick up on the skills that they need most to adapt and thrive in their new community.
Are the refugees offered some free English language courses when they arrive in the US?
Yes, there are some, but so usually when a refugee arrives, they get assistance for the first 90 days. And then they are expected, for refugees that come to the US, they're expected to pay back the cost of their plane ticket here. So that's, and they're supposed to expected to start paying that within a few months of arriving. But they get housing and assistance and medical care for the first 90 days, and agencies try to help them get jobs and kind of get squared away, and maybe take English classes. But if they don't have like a car, or if they don't really know how to get to the classes, there can be some hang-ups. So I guess that's where it's good to have a refugee mentor to kind of like help them get to the classes or meet with them or something like that.
So is every family of refugees has a mentor, or there are just a few mentors, or do you have several mentees?
So ideally, every refugee family would have a mentor. I think that as mentors volunteer, then they're paired up with families that would match the volunteers' skills and interests. But I believe that there are a lot of families that don't have mentors. And it depends on like time commitments too. In general, the goal is to have the mentors meet with the families at least 2 times a month. And it'd be great if it could be more than that. But a lot of it depends on the volunteers and what their schedules are like.
You mentioned some of the common problems that refugees have, like difficulties even reading their email or paying their bills, or probably also going to hospital if they need medical help. So that means that you, as a mentor, have to know quite a lot of different subject matters to be able to help them.
That's true. So I guess that's the fun part. You have to kind of figure out what's going on and what they need. For example, I heard about a family who came, I believe, from Somalia, and someone from the resettlement agency helped them into their new apartment on the first day, help move their belongings and things like that, get them settled. And they said, okay, I'll stop by in the morning to see you. And so they, the resettlement staff member returned in the morning. It was pretty early, and the family was sitting on the couch with all the lights off because they didn't know that the light switch turned the light on.
Oh
you know,
God.
so there, or like, you know, some refugees don't know how to use the oven, or they don't know you can't put like a box in the oven and turn it on. You have to like unwrap. So there are so many things that we can forget about that are normal to our life that they haven't even, or especially like refugees from Burma. Maybe they've been living in a refugee camp in Thailand for a long time and they haven't seen a car. So then you expect them to drive. So that's kind of a big challenge. Yeah. But some other things, so electricity, cars, also, you know, cultural things about like police. In a lot of countries, you can't really trust the police, and you kind of have to defend yourself from the police. So you know, maybe someone from South Sudan here who gets pulled over by the police will get out and try and like defend themselves from the police, and then they end up getting arrested for resisting. And then it's a big misunderstanding, and then we need someone in the court to say, hey, you know, in the culture, they didn't understand what the police were going to do, you know. So, some other things that the refugees need help with. Sometimes other recently resettled refugees will like charge the new ones to give them rides places and things like that. And so sometimes they'll charge them a lot of money to take them to the store and things like that. So it's kind of like, you want to look out for them and say, oh, how are you getting around? How much are you paying for the ride to the store? Legal things, like if there's a car accident and then somebody's getting sued for the accident, how are they going to know how to respond to that, or where to go, or who to talk to? But it's good. There are a lot of like free legal services. Reading mail, applying for food stamps or financial aid. Is a big one, and that I only recently learned how to do it, and it's really hard for me to do myself in English. So that was definitely a learning experience, and that's kind of a cool thing about being a volunteer is you learn a lot of new things yourself. Learning bus routes is really good. That's one of the best activities you can do, just to help them be independent. Medical appointments, getting to the dentist, things like that.
I've been listening to it, and I think that another, probably the upside of being a refugee mentor is because you get to feel the gratitude for what you have and for what you take for granted. You see that for some people, it's something they don't even know how to get on with, like switching on electricity. That would have never occurred to me that someone might have problems with that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And on the other hand, too, like there's so much to gain as well. Like I've been working with an Iraqi family, and they invite me to have meals with them, and they cook really great food, and they share about the culture, and you know, it's just kind of fun to just to keep learning about different cultures. Let's see.
So, and what is going well for refugees? I mean, in terms of their new lives, is there anything positive we can say about their new lives and how they are adjusting to their new homes?
I've seen a lot of great things. I've seen a lot of good work ethic, and many times the children will have to be the interpreter for the family. And so that's kind of exciting. Some of them are thinking about careers in interpreting, and they can share their culture. And other interesting things, I know I read that one of the biggest refugee camps in Thailand is trying to give people more skills training at the camp, because a lot of times people aren't allowed to get jobs. But if they can have roles in the camp where they're in charge of something, or they have some kind of job in the camp, then when they get out of the camp, then they can apply that where they live next. And a lot of times, I guess the tough thing is some refugees might be resettled in a city that has kind of higher living expenses, and then they may have to move to a place with lower living expenses or more job opportunities. A lot of refugees in the US end up working in meat packing plants. So, I mean, it doesn't sound ideal, but that's where there are a lot of jobs that don't have like a language requirement. And it's good for them to get experience and to get benefits and things like that. But yeah, there's a challenge to try and find a way for the refugees to be able to move into other types of work as well.
So is it difficult for refugees to find a job in the US?
It definitely is. Like I said, yeah, a lot of them end up gravitating towards cities that have meat packing industries so that they can get a job there. But there can be really good jobs in those types of situations. But I think we could use more organizations to help do outreach to refugees, to provide them different kinds of opportunities as well.
And what kind of activities can a refugee mentor do with refugees?
There are so many. So reading mail, sharing meals, teaching them to drive. Also, even just like looking through magazines and doing like an English lesson or whatever language, you can kind of use pictures to teach language. Some really important ones are just taking the time to help refugees memorize their personal information. So if someone asks, what is your address? They'll be able to say their address or write their address and their name and their identification number and things like that. That's really important. But some of my favorite things have been going to cultural events, going to the museum, going to the Children's Museum, the Art Museum, going to see fireworks. I think those things are really important too. So
what kind of cultural events do you go to?
Let's see. So I guess a lot of it is just holiday events, like we have 4th of July with the fireworks. Also I don't know, do you guys do Valentine's Day?
Yeah.
So like I got Valentine's cards for the kids, and we got them all decorated, and they were able to like give them out to their classmates, because I know the mom probably doesn't know that all the kids are supposed to bring all these Valentines, enough for everybody in the class and everything like that. So just kind of like looking out for each holiday and like what everybody, or Halloween, you know, getting them costumes for Halloween, just so that then when they're with their friends at school, they can talk about what everybody else is talking about. Also, even just like appreciating their culture. I know that the Korean family I work with, they go to Korean class too, so they can work on their own language, and they can work on English too, but they won't forget their language, and they can share it with other people too. So that's exciting. Also, even just going to events that are related to the culture of the refugee, just to kind of like appreciate them. For example, there's like an iftar breaking of the fast, Ramadan, like at the end of Ramadan celebration coming up for some that a refugee organization is going to put on, just to celebrate with the people who celebrate Ramadan, just to bring awareness and community.
You mentioned often become interpreters for their families. And we probably all know that children pick up languages much faster and easier than adults do. Do they also adapt easier than their parents? And do they have a lot of problems? Or are children, I mean, American probably interrupt, but are they, so to say, friendly to accept the refugee children?
I guess I missed part of that, but so do refugee children adapt quickly, and do the other children?
Yeah, that's it. Carissa?
Accept them. Okay. So I have found that children to be really good at adapting to their new homes and their new schools in general. It can be hard at first, especially like making friends in a new school. But I found that teachers have been really good at connecting with the children and their families and making them feel welcome. I've seen the children I've been working with have been learning the language really quickly. And a lot of times they prefer to make friends with people from the same places. So, for example, like one of the girls that I work with, she says she only likes being friends with other Korean people. But me being a mentor, I said, well, what about me? Aren't we friends? So I think it's kind of like a teachable moment, and I think me being a mentor kind of like helps her open up to making friends with other friends too. And then I think it's kind of hard because like if kids in school are refugees and their parents don't speak much English, it's kind of hard to arrange for like a friend to come over because then the parent doesn't know who to call or who to talk to or how to make that happen. So I think sometimes that that limits how much the refugees mix with other students. So I think that's something that could be improved. But at the school level, I think they can kind of help with that too and encourage everybody to be friends with each other.
And do you think, in general, the communities where refugees live, do they treat them as equals?
In Minneapolis, we have, I think, the largest population of Somali people outside of Somalia. So we have a huge community. But I think that there are a lot of people who are kind of afraid of Somali people, or kind of not very welcoming. And I think, maybe they're not trying to be rude to them, but I think that just like a lack of open-mindedness sometimes isolates that community, and then the community might be hesitant to connect with other people just because of certain experiences. So I think that that's an area like where we really need to put in more effort to make friends across cultures instead of just sticking with whoever we've been friends with for a long time. So hopefully things will change with that.
And do you think government can do something about it? I mean, help refugees to fit into the community and, I don't know, have better programs that are also geared towards the native speakers and the US citizens, encourage them to embrace new refugees, because refugees, they have nowhere else to go, and they need to feel welcome at their new home.
Right, and they have a lot to bring to the table as well.
Yes.
Like their experience, and they've been through a lot of experiences. So we need them, whether we know it or not. But yeah, I think, and I think just any kind of activity, even just improving our own awareness of what's going on, and then trying to reach out to people instead of being in such a rush to get where we're going, take a minute, look around, be friendly to people, whoever. I think that could help change.
Yes, absolutely. So you're volunteering as a refugee mentor. Can you give some kind of advice to other people who would like to also volunteer? Where should they go? What kind of organizations do you have, and how they can join this movement and help other refugees?
Well, there are a lot of different organizations that are reaching out to refugees all over the world. There's the International Rescue Committee, UNHCR. There's an organization called ANERA, and then the Boat Refugee Foundation. I posted an article on my Twitter account with some more information about that. But also, like, more local grassroots organizations are really great for working with refugees too. Even just finding a refugee resettlement agency in your area and then reaching out to them and asking if they could use a volunteer could be a really great start.
Mm-hmm. And are there any requirements to be a mentor?
Some places might have a background check just to make sure that you're safe, and then but other than that, from my experience, organizations have been really happy to have any volunteer, because having a variety of different skills and different people to help is always a good thing.
So, and as a mentor, you have to fit in this volunteering work into your personal life. Do you find it difficult? And what kind of advice can you give to people who want to combine their life and work with volunteering? How to make it easier for them?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think it can be pretty challenging, especially for somebody who doesn't want to say no ever. So I recommend checking in with the refugee family and asking what they need, so that you can spend as much time as possible helping them with what they need, and then you could do additional things after that. And then also just having some boundaries, knowing how much time you have to contribute per month, and trying to keep yourself limited to that, so that you're not overextending yourself, because you don't want to feel upset because you're giving them more time than you have. You want to just make sure that you keep it positive, and that you feel good about the time that you do spend with the family.
And how much time do you normally spend helping refugees, per week or per month?
Yeah, I guess it depends. In the beginning, I spent probably about 5 hours a week. But lately, since I'm in nursing school, I have less time. So usually about 5 hours a month. Yeah.
And how does it make you feel when you help refugees? What kind of feelings do you have?
It feels great. For example, I was working with a girl, and the mother gave me a piece of paper for me to read, and it said that it was a referral to an ear doctor. And I was like, what? Why does she need to go to the ear doctor? She's fine, But I ended up helping take her to the ear doctor, and we found out that in Thailand she had some ear infections. So she had holes in her ear, in her tympanic membranes, both of them. And so she had significant hearing loss, and I didn't even know that she had trouble hearing. But we were able to get her scheduled, and she got the holes fixed, and now she can hear perfectly. which is, and it makes me feel really good because now she's in school, and you want her to be able to hear. How are you going to learn English if you can't hear people? So just little things like that make me feel really good, because there's just little things that we can do to really drastically improve the lives of people. So I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think if everyone would chip in even a little bit, I know, spending, it doesn't sound like you spend too much time helping people.
No.
And it is a couple hours a day, I think that's enough, and it makes a huge difference, like you said. I have a question. I'm interested more about the coverage and how other medical bills are paid. Are they paid by the government, or how does it work? How this whole system works?
Oh, that's a good question. I wrote some notes down about this. Let's see. So so when the refugees come to the U.S., they are expected to pay for their ticket over. So they get a 3-year interest-free loan, and then they're expected to start paying that back a few months after arrival. But as far as housing and medical coverage, they're generally covered for the first 90 days. And then hopefully they can get a job by the 90 days because they won't be covered anymore after that. I think for some, the government pays, yes.
What about what about housing? Do they have to find houses on their own, or government can place them into a house with the family, or find an apartment for them?
So generally, there are resettlement agencies that help kind of help the government. So when a refugee arrives, ideally the resettlement agency will already have an apartment or a house picked out for the family based on the size. And that a lot of times it'll be an apartment. And usually they'll try to find a place that allows subsidized housing. So that if they're low income, then the government could pay part of the rent so that the family could pay like a smaller amount of rent. So a lot of times those resettlement agencies will try to place these families into an apartment that will allow for that subsidized housing. And then so once the government stops paying for the rent, then hopefully that rent will be a small amount that the family would be able to pay if they found a job. But otherwise, the families, sometimes families will settle where the rest of their family already lives. So sometimes the rest of the family can help them pay, or they could move in with their relatives. So it kind of varies depending on the situation after those 90 days are up.
So what if the family cannot pay their bills? What happens?
That's a good question. Well, there are case managers who work with the resettlement agency, and then if they notice that a family is really struggling, then they can bring it up. But I would have to do more research about what exactly happens if they're not paying their bills. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, probably we can. We're gonna publish a recap of this video. So maybe if you have some ideas or you have some useful resources about this topic, you can send us an email, and we're gonna include links.
That sounds great. And I know some people with medical issues, some refugees with medical issues, will get an extension of the benefits to help them. For example, if someone can't work because of a medical issue, there is help for them. And then I think the case manager just has to work with maybe a nurse to continue their coverage.
And what can you say about the whole state of the refugee crisis? Are there any improvements, and where is going?
Well, I think it's pretty sad that we have a large amount of Syrian refugees right now. I was looking at the numbers, and so right now, most of the refugees are coming from Syria, and then Afghanistan, Somalia, and South Sudan. And then the places where most of the refugees are going are Turkey, Pakistan, and then Lebanon. And so right now, most of the Syrian refugees are going to surrounding areas like Turkey. So it's challenging when there's conflict within a country to sometimes it seems like there's not much we can do to prevent further refugees, but things that are going well, I think, like I mentioned, some refugee camps try to empower the refugees and help them have roles that could later be kind of like job experience. So I think that's a really positive thing, because people usually do better when they feel like they have some control over their life. And, you know, I thought it was kind of interesting the way that the United States decides how many refugees to take each year. It's a presidential determination that's signed each October. So, so we accepted 70,000 refugees in 2013, 14, and 15. And then 2016, we decided to accept 85,000. So we increased our numbers. So I think that's good by accepting more refugees. And it's always a challenge because, you know, we want refugees to feel at home, and sometimes it can be really challenging for them to move to a completely different culture with a different language. So it seems like it would be helpful for refugees to stay in a location where they have a common culture and a language, so they don't have such a drastic shift. But I guess at this point, it seems like the more countries can open up and help the refugees, we can take some of the burden off of them.
So basically, you think that refugee camps could definitely improve the way that refugees fit into new communities by empowering them and helping them develop new skills so they could be full members of the new society.
Definitely.
And what countries, apart from Syria, Afghanistan, are there any refugees from Eastern European countries, maybe, or Asian countries?
Yes. Let's see. So I was just looking at refugees in Omaha, Nebraska, for example. So we have a lot of refugees from Afghanistan, Bhutan, Burma, Burundi, Congo, Ethiopia, Iraq, Liberia, Somalia, and Sudan. So, I mean, we do have a lot from Burma, which is so Asia, and Europe. I'm not so sure. I know that there is a population of people from that area, but I'm not sure if they're here as refugees or just as people who moved here. Immigrants. I'm not sure. Yeah, immigrants. Thank you.
All right. So I think we are nearing the 1 hour mark. I think we might have a few questions.
We have a question. We did have a question from Rafa, who was asking, who asked you, have you ever had an opportunity to help women or children trying to escape a dangerous situation? I think Rafa was referring to your experience of living in Egypt, probably, or maybe you had some other opportunities to help women or children.
I have worked with women and children in a few countries. but I don't think I've had a specific example of helping women and children escape a difficult situation. But I have, I was in South Sudan, and I visited a children's village, which is a different way of saying orphanage. And this children's village was for children who lost their parents. A lot of their parents were involved in war in the Congo, and a lot of children were kind of kidnapped and made to be child soldiers in the Congo. And then they were recovered. And then, so it was a really cool program to help children recover from that and go to school and get back into society. And this was a cool program. They had kind of like an adult for each 8 kids, and they were in a little house, kind of like a family. So that was really a cool thing to be part of.
I also have a question.
And you also mentioned that you're planning to pursue a career in nursing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you still going to keep your volunteering responsibilities? Are you still going to be a refugee mentor? Because I think it's kind of too much, no?
It is a lot. It is a lot. But I think that a cool thing about nursing is nursing isn't just in the hospital; it's also in the community. So so there's a good chance that I can be working with refugees as a nurse as well. And it's kind of cool because, you know, as an interpreter, you can advocate for your client, but that's not your main role. But I think a cool thing about nursing is like advocating is a main role of a nurse. So I kind of like taking that advocate role for refugees. So I think that I will be able to do that as a nurse, and I will keep volunteering too.
And do you still use your Arabic skills as an interpreter, or you're not working as an interpreter?
Well, I'm mainly a translator, but I do sometimes use Arabic in the hospital where I work. So I still do use my language skills to translate, and we do have some Arabic-speaking patients, so sometimes there isn't an interpreter, and so they call me over and I help them out. So it's been pretty useful for me.
Great. Mm-hmm. What would you like to see in the future in refugee programs?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just reaching out to refugees in any way is it really makes a big difference. So the more that we can get involved and make people feel welcome, I think that will really improve their lives drastically.
Yes. Let's hope this will happen, and let's hope that all members of our community of people who surround refugees will be very supportive and will help them enjoy their new life and feel welcome. And I just hope that this little blab we have here will inspire people to take more action and to take notice and to look around and look at the people who are surrounding you, because I mean, there are a lot of people in need, and most of us take life for granted. And I think that what you are doing is truly inspiring and amazing. And I'm really grateful that we have people like you. And I just want to say thank you for doing what you're doing for all those poor people who are running from their countries. And you're in my humble opinion, you're a true hero.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your program.
So I think we're gonna wrap things up today. Unfortunately, we lost Yelena somewhere along the way. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, probably something with the internet. Carissa, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure talking about you. I think we covered a very important issue, and I hope this will give our audience and people who are watching this blab in your recording some food for thought. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And big thanks for all the people viewing us today. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for joining our blab, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye-bye.